Hello, my name is Gloria, and I will be reading Wonderstruck by Brian Selznick, creator of the Caldecott's Medal winner, The Invention of Hugo Cabret, Part 3. Why are you here? I don't understand. You are even wearing my mom's clothes. Oh, Ben, I'm sorry. This was supposed to be my secret. Janet sat on the bed, burying her face in her hands, and started to cry. Ben didn't know what to say. He found himself feeling sorry for her. Janet had always made an effort to be nice to him. She was the one who had found him hiding in his mom's closet after the funeral. Instead of telling anyone or making fun of him the way Robbie would have, she climbed inside and sat beside him. The two of them had cried together and held on to each other without saying a word. Janet looked up at him from the bed. She tightened her ponytail and took a deep breath. Benji, I don't know this is your mom's room. She paused and reached to the back of her neck, unclasped a silver locket, and placed in a jewelry box. Ben had never seen the necklace before, but then again, his mom had never worn much jewelry. In a tin coffee can sat on the bed. Janet opened it and handed it to Ben. I found this. I thought you might want it. The coffee can was filled with cash. It had to be his mom's rainy day funds. Ben handed it back to Janet. That's probably a lot of money, Ben. You should keep it. He shook his head and pushed the can back toward Janet, who set it down on the bed. She picked up her own clothes. I'll go change in the bathroom, she said nervously. After she left, Ben looked around the room in a daze. It was just the way he remembered it. The desk with his mom's papers, her bed, which still had her indentation on it, and the piles of the library book on her nightstand. He should have returned those, he thought. His mom would have been unhappy knowing she had overdue books. Benji? Ben jumped at that sound. You okay? Janet was now wearing a pair of cut-off jeans and a light green t-shirt. Ben nodded absently. Janet had let down her hair and tucked it behind her ears. She put the cigars in the middle drawer of the dresser and hung the clothes she'd been wearing in the closet. She replaced the lid on the can full of money and put it on the top shelf in the closet. Come on, Janet said. Let's go home. I am home. I know, I'm sorry. I mean, come back to... No. What? I'm staying here. Janet looked worried. I didn't think that's a good idea. Ben just stood there, rooted to the spot. Ben, you're sort of scaring me. Don't you think? I'm not going to tell your parents. What? I said I'm not going to tell your parents that you are smoking. Just let me stay here for a while. I'll come back later. You promise? Ben nodded. And you really won't tell on me? No. Janet straightened her shirts. I owe you a favor then. Anything you want. There was a lingering moment of silence before Janet said, Well, I'll miss her. You know. Ben nodded. Don't stay too long, okay? A storm is coming. So Janet is now leaving. She is near the fences, and as you can see, the fence right there is broken. So she took her last step and she's out of the broken fence. See, that's still the same fence as this fence, but she's just much more closer, and her foot's right there. And she is now into the woods, and she's right there. This is the woods that she's in. Ben opened his mother's jewelry box and picked up the silver locket Janet had been wearing. His mom's name was Elaine Wilson, and the locket had a fancy EW. Ben thought it stood for Elaine Wilson. It was engraved on the front. It was pretty. Ben had no idea where his mom had gotten it or why she never worn it. He tried to open the locket, but it seemed to be sealed shut. He looked into the little mirror on his mom's dresser and put the locket around his neck away. The silver was smooth against his chest. Janet had left the closet's door open. Ben walked over and breathed in a familiar smell of his mom's clothing. As he crawled inside when he was little, and he loved hiding in there, behind her dresses, perched uncomfortably on her shoes. As his mom got ready for bed, she'd say, "I wish Ben were here to tuck me in," or, "Too bad Ben isn't here to read this great book with me." He would hold his breath, trying not to laugh. Sometimes she'd call, "Ben, are you here?" And he would answer, "No." At the last minute, she'd always say something like, "Well, I wonder where my slippers are." And she'd open the closet door and act surprised when she found Ben hiding inside. It had been a long time since they'd played that game. Ben rested his knees on his head on his knees. He closed his good ear with a finger, blocking out the sound of the wind outside and the rain that had just begun to patter against the roof and the windows. He thought about the coffee can sitting on the shelf above him. He crawled out, pulled over a chair, and took it down. There was a lot of money inside the can, maybe a few $100 even. Ben couldn't believe his mom had saved so much money. Did she ever have any other secrets hidden in her room? What did his aunt or uncle sold the house before he found them? He put the can back and felt around in her folded sweaters. Nothing. It felt strange and wrong to go through her things, but he couldn't stop. He climbed down and opened the drawers in the nightstand, and in her dresser she found endless bills and unreadable tax documents and articles ripped from magazines. There were files related to the libraries and tons of paper he couldn't understand. Then, in the bottom right-hand dresser drawer, he found a plain cardboard envelope. He pulled it out and turned it over. There was no address or stamp. Carefully, he opened it. Inside was something wrapped in tissue paper. The paper wasn't taped down, so Ben pulled it off. He discovered a small blue book. its covers soft and creased with age. On the front, the title was stamped in black letters, Wonderstruck. He flipped through the pages. The book was about the history of museums. On the back it said, published by the American Museum of Natural History. New York, New York. Was this a present his mom was going to give him? Was she hiding it, waiting to surprise him? Ben turned to the front of the book. A child had scribbled some pictures around the edges of one of the opening pages, little flowers and leaves. In the center was an adult's handwriting. In red ink it said, "For Danny, love, M." Ben wondered who Danny could have been and who M was. The handwriting was old-fashioned, so maybe the inscription had been written 100 years ago. Town. Maybe his mom had found it at the used bookshop in town, or maybe someone had donated it to the library's annual book sale. Either way, it was Ben's now. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he held the book as gently as he could. He hadn't read anything since the accidents, but he turned a few pages in Wonderstruck and started reading. Back in the year 1869, New York City had no museum of any kind, either for arts or natural history, such as were to be found in Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, Washington, and in all the capital cities of Europe. Young Theodore Roosevelt built a small museum on the back porch of his house, and his father that same year enlisted in the movement to start the American Museum of Natural History. But let us pause here and ask ourselves, what exactly is a museum? It is a collection of acorns and leaves on a back porch, or it is a giant building costing $10,000. Built to house the rarest, finest things on earth. It's both, Ben heard himself say aloud. Of course, the answer is both. The museum is a collection of objects, all carefully displayed to tell some kind of magnificent story. Think of the endless examples of shells, rocks, bones, and gems on display in the grandest museums on earth, all around the world. These objects didn't appear out of nowhere. Someone like Teddy Roosevelt perhaps collected it, cataloged it, and curated them. Rain continued to cascade against the roof and windows, making a soft, distant drumming sound as Ben read on. A curator's job is an important one, for it is the curator who decides what belongs in the museum. The curator then must decide exactly how the objects will be displayed. In a way, anyone who collects things in privacy of his own home is a curator, simply choosing how to display. Your things decide what pictures to hang where, and in which order your books belong in. Places you in the same category as a museum curator. Ben wondered if he was a curator. He had never stopped to think about why he collected things. It was just something he'd always liked to do. He thought about his wood box. Maybe it was a museum box. Maybe he was making a museum about Gunflint Lake. So this is Janet. She is near the cinema. The cinema is right there. So I think she is going to go there. Because she is looking exactly at the cinema. And this, I think, is New York, New York. This is her getting excited to see her mom perform in the movies. Hopefully. So I think she has been spotting, or she's gone down the tree. So right now she's running. And right now she's right there. And I think she's gonna go here to buy the tickets for the cinema and go in here and go watch something. There was a terrible crash of thunder. Ben rubbed the locket between his fingers and turned a few pages ahead. These early collections, centuries ago, were stored in pieces of furniture called cabinets of wonders. The cabinets were orientally carved with dozens of tiny doors and drawers and hidden spaces filled with nearly infinite varieties of amazing items. Here, one could find everything from precious gems to unicorn horns, interactingly carved ivory, and magic cups that could cure all poisons. Great and glorious works of art resided in these collections, side by side the wonder of nature. Some collections grew beyond the confines of a single cabinet and took over entire rooms. The viewer was able to walk into one of these rooms and, as if reading a book, understands the wonder of the world just from the stories told by the collection objects and how they were displayed. See figure 26. Figure 26 showed an old drawing of the room described above. Almost the entire room was covered in shelves, like his mom's library, except the shelves were much fancier, and it was filled with strangest objects, some of which hung from the ceiling above. There were ornate glass drawers from shells and bones, rows of birds, mysterious sea creatures, human heads and alligators, strangely shaped sculptures, and many things Ben couldn't identify at all. In the center of the room was an interactively carved cabinet with a crown of seashells and coral on the top. Ben studied it in amazement. The viewers was indeed supposed to feel a kind of wonder and awe while looking at every layout before him. If you have ever stood beneath a skeleton of a dinosaur or gazed at a giant diamond, or come up upon something beautiful in nature, a red glowing flower, perhaps growing alone from a cracked sidewalk, you know this feeling of wonder. So this right here is Janet. I think she's watching something in the cinema. Question that I have is, I wonder why kids can go into the cinema by themselves. So she is watching Daughter to the Storm. Sounds pretty interesting. Starring Liliana Mayhew. Liliana is Janet's mom, and Mayhew is Janet's mom's last name. So I can probably infer that Janet's last name is Mayhew too. So this is her just carrying a baby. I think she's wondering if like something like bad weather is gonna come. I don't know. And then I think she sees like some lightning or stuff over there somewhere. Oh no, the storm's here. It's too late. So yeah, she's there. It's really hard rain, I can just tell that. Just look at all that rain, and that's her behind the tree that's about to fall on her. That looks pretty dangerous. And here's the ginormous lightning, and these rumps on the bottom are the seats. That kind of looks like the lightning bolts on the front cover. And the cloud. Just really dangerous, I can tell. A brilliant bolt of lightning, white hot and electric, came hurtling out of the sky, accompanied by another huge crash of thunder. The lights went out. Ben wanted to go back to his cousin's house now. He tucked the book into the back of his pants, pulled the flashlight, and made it his way to the kitchen. He couldn't find any umbrellas, so he took one of his mom's winter coats from the hall closets and held it over his head for protection. Against the rain, lightning kept flashing, momentarily illuminating the room like flashbulbs on a camera. Another crack of thunder shook the house, and Ben realized he had better wait out the storm here. 83 steps could be very far in a weather like this. He put away his mom's coat and returned to her room. He crawled into the indentation in her bed and lay on his back. He propped the flashlight against his shoulder so it pointed upward, and he held the book directly over him. Just as he was about to start reading again, something fluttered out of the book, landed on his chest. It was an old bookmark. Ben sat up and inspected it. The bookmark was frayed at the edges, and on it was a black and white drawing of a storefront. It's with books piled up in the window and spilling out the boxes and shelves on the sidewalk. A black cat sat listlessly near the book. and door. The awning above the windows read Kincaid's Books. At the bottom were the store's address and phone number. He turned in the bookmark over. The black ink, in black ink, someone had written, February 1965, Elaine. This piece of me is for you. Please call or write. I'm waiting. I'll be waiting. Love, Danny. Beneath that were a phone number and an address in New York City. So this is still in the movie, The Dark Woods. I can tell it's in the movie because I still see those rumps, and those rumps are probably the seats on the bottom. Where can we find shelter from the storm now? That's still in the movie. And then you can tell that she saw that her house, or someone's house or something, the house roof busted off, and it's too strong, and that roof just flew off. So that is all I'm going to read today. I'll see you in my next video in parts 4, number 4. Bye!